We are back with episode 2 of My Mayor, and joining me again is candidate Kevin Batdorf. Welcome, sir.
Well, thanks for having me again. First round went well.
It did. All right, you ready for round 2?
Sure.
All right, first question. What's something you become much better at in the last 5 years that would surprise your younger self?
I'd have to say that would be the ability to say no. I've learned that no is a complete sentence. As someone who helps others, you develop solutions for people. They understand that I'm the fixer. I'm the guy to call. I'm the guy to go to. Sometimes it's for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the masses. So sometimes I just have to say, no, I can't do that.
That's an important one. I mean, as mayor, I'm sure there'll be many, many more requests than there is time and ability and resources to address them all. How would you describe your triage process for understanding A, when you have to say no from resource limitations, or B, understanding when to say no because it's really just better to say no?
Well, you have to assess the entire situation. When it comes to resources, there's going to be some hard decisions that need to be made. I'm able to do that without regret. I know it's tough to hear, but there are going to be some positions at the city that won't be there after I become mayor, and there's going to be some programs that won't be available because we need to tighten the belt.
Okay. Along those lines, it's kind of in the same ballpark as questions go, based on what we just talked about. What's a question that you wish more people would ask before forming an opinion?
Before I answer that, I'm gonna tell you the question most people do ask, which is mind-boggling. Are you a Republican or a Democrat? I'm like, what does that have to do with a nonpartisan race? So apparently, whatever you registered as when you were 18 years old influences other people's decisions on whether you're a good person or not. So the question I'd prefer they ask, and this is something I contemplated for years as to why aren't we more, all of us, thinking along this line? The question is, what's your interpretation of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech? Because that will tell you everything about somebody and where their mindset is. There are people that will say, well, it was a good speech, but it was idealistic, and it doesn't address the problems of the past. I don't think he was trying to address the problems of the past more than he was trying to address the solutions for the future. And I really believe in my heart that we are all the same, and we need equal opportunity to show that. We need to embrace our differences and treat each other as equals. It's that simple. And once we do that, then we can move into the future. But if we keep looking to the past and where you were or where you weren't, it will never get there. We'll just never get there.
Interesting. Tell me about a time you've realized you've been completely wrong about someone.
This is a tough one. There were several people in my life that I was wrong about, but this one really threw me for a loop. My brother Bob, he's the oldest of 4 boys in our family. My mother raised us all by herself. He was, I think, top 2 in his high school class. He got a full scholarship to University of Miami. He started running a restaurant business there as a part-time job, and gave Miami Sound Machine their start. Very successful in everything that he did. He opened restaurant chains around the country. He did so many different things. I looked up to him so much. And then one day he disappeared. And through my research, tracking his banking accounts and his medical records and everything that we could do, we discovered he went to Las Vegas and killed himself. Never saw that coming. Never saw that coming. Had no idea that was even something that he would consider. He wasn't that guy. So that's probably the one thing that surprised me the most about somebody.
Yeah, it's very intense. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah.
Well, again,
sorry to be Debbie Downer.
No, that's a very real answer. That's what we're here for. So thank you for that. This may be kind of riffing in the same territory. What's a lesson that life taught you the hard way?
Trust is a fleeting concept. I was taught very young that you trust people. Trust is mutual and exclusive to pretty much any relationship that you form. But I've learned that trust is actually conditional. And it's based on the other person's ability to be trustworthy. And it's very odd because when I trust someone, I trust them with all of my heart, with everything right off the bat. And I know I've heard the statement, what is it? Once bitten, twice shy. You know what? It's true, I guess. And unfortunately, that's just the way life is right now. It's now trust, but verify. It's not trust openly from the beginning. You have to be able to trust people, though, in order to get things done. But we live in a world where, where that may not exist. So that's a lesson I've learned over time that people are trustworthy to a degree.
So trust gets stress tested when the person you're trusting has to act not in their best interest necessarily. If they're being true to something they promised you, as mayor, the whole world now becomes someone who you're, the whole community becomes someone you're interacting with. And so there's, it's going to be heavily steeped in self-incentive and things like that. So to that end, trust on one hand is something you do for your own quality of life. I choose to trust because I live a better life that way, up to a point where it can become a negative ROI for trusting too much. When you expand into the realm of being mayor and the whole community is asking things of you and you're asking things of them, everything from confidentiality to sticking to, agreements and things like that. How do you parse out the part of you that wants to trust because it was how you were brought up and it's just the way you want to live in an ideal world where trust exists versus the reality of where it doesn't, and not going too far in either direction where you're too cynical or too trusting? How do you find that balance?
So that's a great question. Accountability has to come into play. So when you're the mayor, you're the top, right? You're the guy who makes the decision. If you hold people accountable then they have no choice but to be trustworthy in that position. Otherwise, they're going to lose their job or something else. It's unfortunate that we don't live in an idealistic world. I mean, I would like to, if everything were roses everywhere, but there's corruption, and it's not blatant corruption. It's moral corruption. It's decision making that's based on special interest or your interest, and we see that every day. I know people don't know who I am internally, but that is what I want to fix. I want trust to come back to City Hall. I want people to understand that we're doing what we can to make the city better when I become mayor. Transparency is key. Light shines a lot on evildoers. So I plan to have press conferences as often as possible. I'd like to say weekly, but sometimes there's no news that week. So the door is always going to be open to anybody who has questions about what we're doing or how we're spending money. There aren't going to be any hidden accounts. There's not going to be the water department holding back why people were being billed crazy amounts, $5,000, $10,000. It's unnecessary to hide all that information. If you're transparent, people will trust you. If people trust you, they'll allow you to do your job. And if you don't do your job properly, then you're held accountable. Our city hall does not hold the mayor's office accountable. I'm sorry, our city council. It's unfortunate that they're not doing their job in overseeing what's happening at City Hall. It's very frustrating. So I'm not going to have the same relationship with City Council. I'm going to try to do my best to get along and get things done. But I want them to hold me accountable.
And when you talk about special interests, a lot of things with mayor, there's a line you have to walk. And at some point, an interest you have, I think you actually said what the mayor's interests are could also be positioned as his or her opinion. This is the way things should be. And sort of juxtaposed against that is just ultimate utility and pragmatism. And, sometimes it's easy and it's like, yes, the billing should be transparent. That's sort of a, in theory, one that there's not a lot of controversy around. But there are going to be other things with regard to should we build a tower, should we not build a tower, that will come down to your opinions on development and how much you press in one direction or the other. And so, again, what's the mayor's role for taking their own opinion, their own perception of what's best for the city with regard to any topic? I'm saying development as an example here, versus some sort of completely emotionless, pragmatism rubric, and assuming transparency, fits with either of those options. How do you see the mayor's role kind of between those two extremes?
Well, you take every situation as mayor and you look at it through the lens of, is it in the best interest of the city as a whole? Not just one part of the city. And for example, Tropicana Field. What's the best way to develop Tropicana Field? Well, I'm going to look at it. What's in the best interest of St. Petersburg? The current mayor seems to think that somebody's owed something for that property, when in fact, when that property was purchased, everybody was compensated at fair market value for the homes that they owned, and people who were renting actually got stipends to move to different locations. Section 8 housing really didn't exist until that. So all the renters were provided some sort of benefit package. I'm not sure what you call it, but nobody was ripped off during that time. And as a matter of fact, I believe somebody came out last week with information showing that the mayor's family benefited from the sale of Tropicana Field. So I don't know what promises he's talking about that we need to keep. Economic opportunity should always be there if that's what he's talking about. But it's been there. Businesses have popped up. They just couldn't make it. That's the market. That's just the way it works. But as far as what goes there, my thought is that is in the downtown corridor. It should be downtown type structures, bringing jobs in, bringing opportunities for people in. Low income housing does not belong there. We have a pretty big city, and there are some good tracks where you can build property. We keep hearing we're overbuilt or built out, but we're actually not. There's a lot of places where we can build housing. It doesn't belong downtown. I think we need to bring jobs. I'm pretty confident Moffett will come back. But we need other jobs like that so that people are paid well and they can afford to live where they want to live. But as mayor, I'm not going to dictate what happens there. I'm going to listen to what comes across the desk and see what is in the best interest of St. Petersburg, not one small section of St. Petersburg. And that's for anything that we do. If we want to try some type of light rail transportation system, I look at light rail and I think it's a great idea. I think people will use it, but nobody wants to pay for it. Where are you going to take it? Where are the hubs? We're in such a place right now that you have to have a car to get anywhere that you want to. Everything is so spread out. I think I went off track again.
No, that's all right. That's all right. It's good. Some good thinking in there. All right, final question. When nobody's asking anything of you and curiosity takes over, what rabbit hole are you most likely to disappear into?
That's funny. I drive my wife nuts and my 14-year-old son with this. I start listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about Einstein and theory of relativity and how time is the fourth dimension and how that factors into our life today and what processes does it change or affect in real life. There's questions like, is there such a thing as cold? And the answer is no, but people don't want to understand or believe that. It's actually the absence of heat. So it's things like that are really, I don't know, high brain type thinking of science that nobody cares about in the real world. I really like listening to that type of stuff and trying to understand, because I'm no Einstein. But just to get a feel, like a hydrogen car, what is that? How does that work? If there wasn't a risk of a hydrogen car blowing up, it's the perfect system because the waste product is water. But you have a hydrogen bomb in your vehicle. So how do you make that work? So the rabbit hole I go down is trying to understand, because I'm a fixer. I try to come up with solutions, and I'm looking at things that I can't solve, and that makes me want to look at it more. How do I get there? There's a lot of things I can solve, a lot of things that are common sense. And people don't use common sense, especially in government. But that's why I like science, because these are things that challenge you and there are no answers sometimes. Does that make sense?
It does. I've been on a quantum entanglement kick myself recently, and that's super interesting stuff. Wonderful. Well, thanks. Another great episode. I appreciate you joining me for episode number 2. We got 1 or 2 more to go for the primary, and so we'll look forward to catching up again in a couple weeks. And until then, good luck on the campaign trail.